Okay, welcome everybody. If you've tuned into some of the sessions this morning, I hope you're enjoying them. And welcome to our lunchtime session. So this one is the Taste of Success, and we are joined by some of the representatives from our sponsor companies. Now, without these guys, we wouldn't have been able to put the event together and run it without them. So thank you so much for all of you for joining us. Just a couple of housekeeping points before we get going. We are recording this session and recordings will be made available after the conference. If you can keep your microphones off and videos off throughout, that would be fantastic. We also have the chat box feature, and I would encourage you to ask questions throughout the session. So I'm going to hand you over to Flick Gabby, who is moderating our session from Transcript, and I hope you enjoy.
Thanks, Jasmine. Welcome, everybody. We have quite a big panel today to discuss this session on a taste of success, which is really around recruitment and retention, and what you might wish for in terms of being in a life sciences company. And we have on the panel, we have people from Big Pharma, from biotech, from CROs and recruitment. So a very broad range of people for whom you can ask questions of, and also people who represent quite a big range of places in life sciences. So from early discovery right through to development and beyond, and that illustrates the range of things that you can do in life sciences, both at entry and what you might be able to achieve in your careers in the long term. So as we've got quite a big panel, what we're going to do really is just to do a very short introduction round the panel, and then we will respond to your questions. But should you feel that you don't have enough questions for us, we have a list of things we might discuss that you might be interested in, and so we'll play it informally like that. I will simply start very briefly with my career. I started in pharma more than 3 decades ago in Big Pharma, as many people did then. I'm a physician originally, with a pharmacology degree as well as a medical degree and a passion for research. So that's where I predominantly started. I then found I reached a glass ceiling, so I set up a CRO, which I sold to a big CRO, and then became a CEO in biotech and worked in biotech. And since then, I thought about retiring, and then somebody else persuaded me that we'd set up another company. We set up a consultancy called Transcript, where we do pretty much exactly what I've always done, but instead of doing it for one company, I'm doing it for about, well, I'm personally not, or my staff are doing it for maybe about 30 companies at a time, which is very exciting. And so it gives me great pleasure to hand over to the people on this panel. Maria, do you want to start giving a little bit of background to yourself?
Sure, thank you, Flick. So I'm Maria Herba. I work in Charles River, which is a CRO, and I'm a group leader in there. So my background before this was in Big Pharma. I was working in AstraZeneca, and before that I was in academia for quite a few years. So it was already from my past job that I became actually interested in people development, in recruitment. So I got involved in various programs around early talent acquisition, and that's something that I'm currently doing also in Charles River. So IP student programs, graduate programs, ways to actually attract new, fresh people into the company that can then be working with us and progress with us and hopefully retained, and happy to continue working in the company. So I think that's what I'm bringing to this panel.
Thanks, Maria. Manuela.
Yes, hello everybody. It's a pleasure to be here today. I'm representing the SLRS today, where I just recently joined the board of directors at SLRS after being an active member for many, many years in different roles. One of the most exciting roles within SLRS, I must say, was building up this community in Europe. So we started very small with some committees in order to understand what is needed in Europe for connecting science and technology providers. And when we built the first conference in Brussels, this was a really exciting moment for me. So who is SLRS? SLRS is the Society for Laboratory Automation and Screening. And the aim of SLAS is to connect people from different industries, academics, life science, biotechnology, pharma, as well as the innovation automation providers in the industry. And what can I bring in here today is one of the key elements in SLAS is education. It's to provide information and professional developments that unite the researchers across different disciplines. So we offer very different or several programs, especially for early career scientists. And I'm happy to introduce some of them, of course, today, if there are any questions coming up. Besides this, I'm also a director of the business field in Analytica for liquid handling and automation. And I must say, I'm passionate about automation in life science. So I really love robotics. I love what you do with the robotics, what comes out of that. And so that's something I can bring in today. And I'm very happy to answer any questions together with this great group here.
Thanks, Manuela. David.
Yeah, thanks, Blake. Afternoon, everybody. My name is David Cronk. I'm Chief of Staff at DomainX, so a small CRO based just south of Cambridge. So in the role, I run the biology department, but I also am responsible for the links between the staff development, staff retention, recruitment through to the business aspect. So it's very much looking at the overall company culture and how we can use that to grow the business and develop it so we end up with a happy and sustained workforce as well. I've run about 30 years experience in the pharma industry. I left school at 18, did my degree part-time, did a pharmacology degree, probably not dissimilar to Flick's background. Worked for a couple of years in the civil service as a scientist before joining the pharma industry. So 15 years in large pharma, a couple of years in biotech, and then prior to joining DomainX at the start of the year, I was 15 years within Biofocus Charles River, where I had the pleasure of working with Mario. So, very sort of varied background, and have experienced most aspects of the drug discovery sector. So looking forward to the conversation.
Thanks, David. Phil.
Hello, everyone. I'm pleased to be able to join and pleased that we're able to support this important topic. I trained as a biologist and ran a research group for a number of years,
Paul,
and then
would you mind making me coffee?
And then joined industry. Firstly, the biotech sector for a number of years, and then 4 years ago, made the unusual move relative to many of my peers, went from small company to big company. Usually people do it the other way around. Joined MSD, or Merck & Co, as we know it in the US and Canada. In MSD, I lead a team of business development professionals, which are focused on collaboration and partnership across the academic, VC, biotech, and peer pharma sectors. And our focus is on Europe and the Middle East. MSD has a growing presence in the UK and across Europe. We announced recently we're building a big new site on Euston Road, just across from King's Cross. We'll have about 800 people on that site when it's up and going. We're expanding our scientific workforce from about 30 to 40 at the moment to 150 over the next few years. And also on that site have a range of expertise as clinical development, scientific and medical affairs, regulatory affairs, and of course our commercial organization. So a range of opportunities in the future with us once we get our new site up and going.
Thanks, Phil. Sounds very exciting. Seb.
Hello, everyone. My name is Seb, and I'm representing CATSAI. CATSAI is a process research and development partner to pharma sector working in small molecules. We are based in Cardiff, South Wales. However, we are now opening a state-of-art lab in East London as well. So the company is growing, and we are at a very interesting period of time now, very challenging, but very, very exciting. Working as a talent lead at CATSAI, I am responsible for all aspects related to our talent acquisition, employer branding. What I'm bringing to the table is probably 10 years experience in equality, diversity, and inclusion. And with that in mind, CATSAI is working very hard on daily basis to ensure that we are one of the most diverse companies. We work in between our new early career scheme, as well as working with more mature candidates who wants to join us on flexible arrangements. We are working really hard to ensure that our gender balance is 50-50, as well as we are increasing our diversity of nationalities. At the moment, we've got 10 different languages spoken within the business. And I hope that one day I will see that doubling. And I hope that we are on a good way to achieve that. I will be more than happy to share with you any ideas and tips how to be successful in the process of joining any of the pharma companies, whether it's CATSAI or any other companies that my colleagues are representing. And also, I'm more than happy to share any information about our retention and well-being programs that we recently implemented. So I'm happy to answer any questions you've got.
And finally, Ricky.
Perfect, thank you, Flick. Firstly, whoever's asking for a coffee early, if they can make me one when they came on, I would happily take one. I thought I'd just break the ice slightly with a coffee joke. I'm Ricky Martin, everyone. I think I said this before, but I'm not the singer. I'm a slightly different version. I'm a biochemist by academics. For those that are on the slightly earlier panel on investing in R&D, I was chairing the panel earlier. And my background is I've spent 15 years in the life sciences supporting and connecting people with their careers. So unfortunately, I didn't pursue the dream of being a day-to-day scientist. I don't think anyone would have wanted to have hired me because I speak too much, but I use my talking in a slightly different capacity these days. So I work with companies up and down the UK, other parts of Europe, and a bit part in the US as well, working with large and small companies, whether you're a small molecule, large molecule, therapeutics organization, early stage discovery, development, manufacturing. I support talent across that sector. And I spend most of my time as the owner of HRS, the founder, helping people get jobs. And in my own consultancy, Recruiter Ricky, I spend a lot of time consulting with businesses on putting together the right EVPs, creating an attractive proposition to hire the right talent. What do you do, not just to hire people, but how do you keep people? So some of the things that Seb's talking about that are really important to him. They're the type of things that I talk about all day. So hopefully, as a taste of success, I can share some of my thoughts as well as others and help everyone with whatever they're doing next.
Thanks, Ricky. Now, at the moment, we don't have any questions in the chat box, but I'm sure they will come. So please feel free to ask questions. You've got a very broad range of people on the panel here. I think one of the things we could start with, whilst you're thinking about the questions you might like to ask, is why people joined the industry and what is attractive about it. So I don't know who would like to go first with that. If not, maybe Maria, you'd like to start.
Yes, why not? I was just getting mute because there's a motorcycle outside of my window now. It's okay. So I think that is quite personal. I think that, so when I started in academia, I thought that my path was going to be a very linear one. So doing my undergrad, getting into my PhD, postdoc, research fellowship, all the way up to professor. That was my initial thought when I was doing the PhD. But then things start to change and you start feeling differently about your science. So for example, I got a fellowship that was very much related with drug development. And I didn't feel that the department where I was working on was particularly keen on that type of research, and the drug development bit really attracted me. So at that point, I started looking outside of academia, because I thought that was something that I wanted to explore further. And there was an opportunity in AstraZeneca, and I went for it. So I think there's people that come into industry from academia at very different points. I think that David mentioned before that he actually started in the industry path very, very young. I actually stayed for a bit longer, and there's actually people that stay way after they get actually to that professorship and then make the switch. And there's a lot of back and forths now in between academia and industry.
Flick, if I can jump in with a kind of a response to why be in the sector. I think sometimes when you're in the sector, it might sound a mad thing to say because I speak to people in and out. Life science sector is a sector that changes lives. It's a sector that makes a difference. It's a sector that really, really adds value to lots of different people in so many different ways. And when I was studying biochemistry, I didn't know what the future would hold. All I knew is if I could somehow develop something I was interested in, which was helping people, I would have a fulfilled life as I get older. I didn't know what that would look like and how I'd help people. And I think when we're in science, we take it for granted that as a sector, it is a sector making a difference. And when you look across the world right now, the amount of industries that are on harder times, and actually we're in an industry which is first and foremost helping to get a vaccine to market to help people, to support diagnostic assessments and all the different amazing things it does. I think why be in the sector? Because it makes a difference. And I think we need to remind ourselves that all the time. And the bigger the business gets sometimes, which is great, you get some that are really patient orientated that filters through the organization, and some that's more commercially led and less patient orientated. I'd always say, remind yourself why you're in the sector, care about it, tell others outside of the sector how amazing it is, because I didn't go to practice science when I studied. I do something very, very different. But in my own way, I still help people. I still help people in the sciences. I still help patients get medicine. So if I give a really overview view from my side, it's a sector we should be proud of. It's a sector we should champion. And it's a sector that I love being part of, even though I'm one step removed as a supplier rather than practicing, but I still feel like part of it.
I think that's a very strong point, and I'm going to bring in David, who I think was going to speak before, but we've just been invested in by a private equity company who have a social impact fund. And when they came to us, they said, everybody who's invested in by us must have a social impact. And I said, oh, how do we demonstrate that? He said, you don't need to, you're in life sciences. And that was simply it, because what we do has a social impact. David, I think you were going to say something about.
Yeah, I was, and you know, you see a lot of CVs with people I want to come in and discover drugs that could change people's lives. But I've been in the industry for over 35 years. I think I've only ever got one drug that went into a clinical trial, and that one didn't get anywhere. But I think it just opens up so many avenues that you go into a lab role. You know, Rick is diverted off into kind of recruitment and retention. You know, I got into high throughput screening, so I played with lots of automation, and you meet all the application scientists, instrument engineers, automation engineers, and there's all the backroom stuff that sits behind that bit, contract management, or you know, people in similar fields as yourself, Flick, in terms of your regulatory affairs, medical information, etc., etc. So just because you've done a science degree, it doesn't mean to say your natural path is a lab-based role. It's a way to open a door to allow you to stay scientifically aligned and to use that critical thinking, but don't just think that scientists have got a white coat on, because they haven't. It kind of speaks to the question that Isla's raised in the chat box, is there are so many different things out there that aren't just about being a lab-based scientist. You know, data analysis, computational sciences, you know, yada yada yada. It goes on.
Yeah.
And you never see, just because you've embarked down one road, you can't take a turning off.
Yes, no, absolutely. And I think that comment in the chat box, Phil, I see you leaning forward.
I just wanted to add that with respect to the pharmaceutical industry end of the life sciences sector, that the ethos about bringing medicines forward that benefit patients is our core driver also. I've worked across the charity, biotech, and now the pharma sector, and that is our driver. Our founder, George Merck, said, make medicines that change lives of patients and the money will follow, never do it the other way around. And we still live by that 130 years later. And the scientific drive, the value of data, the value of publishing what we do in basic research or in clinical trials is just as strong in our company or in the pharma industry as it is in the other parts of the life science industry.
Oh, very, very good point. Manuela, do you want to make a comment?
Yes, first of all, thanks for the comments before, because I really love what you said. Science became just so much important more and more, and it's cool again. It's like when you look the last year, what happened and how fast things happened. I must say, it's just we have such a responsibility for everyone, for all the human beings, and I think scientists are also an important link for technology providers. We need that input from the science in order to provide the right tools in the future. And I think being a scientist, you can, as it was said before, there are so many avenues, so many different paths and choices that, yeah, so building a career on science is very exciting, I can imagine.
Rick and Seb, have you got any thoughts on how people, such as yourself, that have got science background but haven't necessarily gone into a lab-based role, how best you can access those kind of career dimensions?
I think what I want to say is it's very important to also recognize your transferable skills when you are looking for opportunities. Going into study into any field, we're obviously talking about life sciences, but it works kind of everywhere you look at it. You decide to study your degree, and at some point you might feel that is not actually what I want to do. However, I still want to have an impact in my field of study. And if you do have that drive, if you do have that passion, then it's just trying to recognize, where do I fit in? What do I want to do? If I look at CATSI, we've got people within our operational support, within our facilities, within all the supporting functions. A lot of them actually got a relevant degrees. They just chosen that they don't want to be in a lab, or the career took them in a totally different way to where they are now, and they are more than happy. So it is not about, oh, this is the only way how I'm going to benefit from my degree. Is actually seeing the bigger picture. There is always a place where you can have an impact if you've got the drive to do it.
I think that's important. And Ricky, did I interrupted you? Sorry.
No, it's not a problem. I was just going to follow on from what Seb was saying. There's a place for everyone fundamentally. I think that's really, really important. But I think people just need to realize, I spoke about this earlier, is what is your strength? What is your interest? And when you bounce out of bed in the morning, what are you excited about? Because it doesn't need to be as binary as I've studied biochemistry, I did, so I have to go and work in the laboratory. It doesn't need to be as binary as that. Place your strengths. I grew E. coli 12 hours a day for 5 days in my final year at university. I decided I didn't want to work with bugs after uni. But at the time, I didn't know the options. It was binary. My outcome was, well, I just have to not go into sector then. But what did I do outside of that? Okay, to support my university studies, I worked in sales and I spoke to people, I connected with people. I quite enjoyed that commercial element of that. So for me, it was about trying to connect the things that I actually play to my strengths, talking, hence why I'm probably on a panel. Play to my interests. I quite like that more commercial world, and I wanted to find a scientific twist to it. So for me, it was either at the time medical repping, which I think has got harder and harder as the years went on, or what I found is speaking to scientists about their careers. So I think what people need to do is they need to look at what they really, when they bounce out of bed, do they love what they're doing? And if they do, try and ask themselves why. what are the things I love about my day, speaking to people, meeting people. I don't like any of that. I like the technical solving problems. I like being innovative. I like coming up with the ideas. So I guess I want to share that there is no one size fits all solution for anyone. We just need to look at what we really, really enjoy, because when we enjoy it, we're going to play to it and we're going to be better at the job and we're going to be more satisfied. So I guess it's strengths and purpose as well as just what's next.
Yes. I think I'd like to just answer Isla's question first about having some advice about clinical trials and operational stuff with regard to regulatory and medical affairs, because that is something that we certainly do. And there are quite a lot of jobs for clinical trial managers and so on, which if you get good at, you are very sought after. And it's a good way to start and gradually grow into the operational side of medical affairs well, of the operational side of running clinical R&D, and then subsequently you can go into medical affairs, regulatory, whatever you want to do. But I think don't be afraid to go after the more junior jobs in inverted commas, because in clinical, learning your trade is very important to understand all the aspects of what happens in clinical drug development. And we take not only science graduates, we take arts graduates into our organization, and they gradually get trained to do not necessarily client-facing roles in science, but certainly a lot of the peripheral activities, project leadership, quality. Our head of quality is a history graduate who's been with us for over 10 years, and she's absolutely brilliant. And so I think there are lots of ways in, and I think that there are quite a lot of organizations like Manuela's organization and the recruiters who would always be very happy to talk about how you can get in. And also the big pharmas, quite often, if you speak to them or write to them, they will quite often have some intern jobs and things that you can help you in. So I think, Isla, I don't know if that answers your question, or if anybody else wants to come back on Isla's question.
Look, if I can piggyback on the back of that. Sorry, Seb, did you want to jump in first?
Go on, Ricky, no problem.
All I was going to share is when it comes to some of those kind of supplement or complementary jobs, like regulatory affairs, clinical trials, medical liaison, they're not always easy to go straight into from a university perspective. When you're coming as an early career, sometimes they can be painted as quite interesting pathways, but quite hard to get that first nugget of experience. And I think going to the point of be prepared to take internships, opportunities of development, use LinkedIn to speak to people in those roles, to find out more about them, and to, where possible, shadow, understand more, because the catch-22 as an early career graduate is trying to move into areas like RA, whether you're a consultancy, a big pharma. The market wants people with experience because it's short of supply, and people want to get in it because it can offer great opportunities, but not get the experience at the front end. So you need to be able to use your network where you can to find out more about it and to seek opportunities of training, internships, on occasions unpaid things as well, and have the humility to do that, because you're not going to jump straight in as a grad going straight into an RA trainee role. There's more people that want it than there are opportunities.
Yeah, and actually most of the regulators I know all started in clinical operations or in clinical research somewhere, or in toxicology or in chemistry, and moved into those roles later on. So
a lot of people move in and move across.
I think organizations like Topra and so on are very helpful around that sort of thing. Phil, were you wanting to say something in that?
Just wanted to totally agree with what Ricky and Seb said, but also just wanted to add as a tangible example, my organization in London takes on about 30 interns in the clinical trials operation space. And as I think Ricky said, getting in can be a really hard thing, but once you're in, moving around, the opportunity, if you perform, the opportunities are there to move to other parts, other roles, and gain more experience.
I can echo that, Phil, as well. And what I want to say, if you are looking for ways how to get to a sector or how to do what you really, really want, yes, it's one way, like Ricky said, you know, engaging with people maybe on LinkedIn, like Flick said, writing to companies, and you will see all the different approaches. You've got big pharma that's got a very established early career schemes, or, you know, taking loads of interns. You will have SMEs that are doing the same thing in a totally different way because they're trying to do it slightly different. But how the other way, how you can have that meaningful conversation is actually almost targeting us as companies on different type of events. You've got career fairs organized, you know, across the UK on universities, or there's online events at the moment. You've got loads of employers going to universities and supporting different types of employability courses, different types of workshops, there's sometimes webinars. And regardless of the topic, why we are there is because we want to actually engage with you and give you that information at the early career stage. So just engage with us, ask us questions, and we'll be more than happy to give you the most comprehensive answer there and then, so you can know what to do in the next step of your career.
Thanks.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with Seb. Actually, I mean, I actually met some of those people that were later on my employers at networking events, and I don't feel that actually gave me the job, but it made it so much comfortable when sitting in an interview with people that you have met already in a scientific event where you were, you know, sharing a glass of wine and talking about science in a natural and relaxed way.
It is.
The point that I wanted to make before was linking kind of getting internships and defining what your strengths or your best things, what you want to do are. And is the many companies are now offering graduate programs that actually allow you to get into the company for a set period of time, let's say 2 years, and then do rotations in different parts of the company. So if you don't have clear yet what it is that you want to be doing, if working in client services or working in the lab or working with pieces of automation, these opportunities are absolutely brilliant to actually get a bit of a taste of everything before making out your mind and also seeing where your preferences and your strengths sit within that particular company. So yeah, I think
that's very good. Manuela, you do a lot of educational programs and so on. How do people get advice around when they're coming in from academia into life sciences? Although actually academia is very much part of life sciences, isn't it?
Yeah, I agree. So academia, I think, is where everything starts, isn't it? Where curiosity and questions are raised, and so we need our academia. And for SLRS, you know, we help young scientists. So there are several programs like grants or scholarships, or what I really love is the poster competition, the student poster competition, where students can actually show and present what they have been doing, what they have come up with. And it's a nice way in and to be recognized and start networking and meet and learn with other people. And I think this is really, I think that's when I would be young again, I would go to these conferences and really connect and present my work. You can be proud of what you've done. So, and here we at SLRS really love to help and support.
I just want to raise the fact that we've got here Hector, who's asked a question about AI and about potentially moving into that in-house. And how do you go there? I suspect I know the answer, but I suspect it's something similar to going into regulatory affairs. Though maybe somebody would like to take a shot at Hector's question.
Hector, I noticed you mentioned Birkbeck, just around the corner from where you are, you've got a number of companies in the AI space. Benevolent is one of those. Suggest you try reaching out and talking to people in the company. There's a number of them in this in the area. However, a lot of course, startup companies jumping into the area, and a lot of excitement going on, as well as bigger companies getting into the space. So identifying people, even as I say, locally, that you can have a chat with about the area you want to get into, and then potentially companies that you could join down the line.
Yeah. And one nucleus events are great. Next generation sequencing is around. Lots of people will talk to you until you're bored silly about that. It'll be challenged to stop them talking rather than the other way around. But yes, as Phil says, you're in a great place for networking where you are at Birkbeck. So carry on. So that all sounds very good.
It seems a bit strange, but actually writing somebody a physical letter. I mean, I had
absolutely
somebody leaving school wrote me a letter looking for a gap year placement this year, which is impressive since it's only been with the company 3 weeks, and she's addressed it to me personally. It's way easier to ignore emails and approaches through LinkedIn than if you want to, meet with somebody in a company, Hector, anybody else, find a contact and send them a physical letter. It sounds really old school, but it's we're way too good at ignoring emails. I've got 100 and something unread in my inbox. So yeah.
Yes. Yes. And I think,
look forward to it.
I think that's great. I see, Isla, you're also commenting on the fact that the networking of people who are already in regulatory affairs and so on is very important. Networking is really important everywhere. And I think that's probably one of the strongest messages coming out of this discussion. Networking, organizations like SLAS and all these sort of things, one nucleus, and all that sort of thing is really very important. We have a few more questions in here. So there's a question about Msd Neuroscience. Just to comment, I think that they were hired straight into that group, and I think people are frequently, and the more senior you are, I think I'll ask questions, can you come in later on? And the answer is yes, yes, yes. And we have some very senior people, such as Patrick Valance, for example, who joined when he was well down the track in terms of academic experience. And I think that there is a lot of interaction between academia and pharma, and pharma isn't necessarily a last resort or a first resort. It is very much integrated these days, and includes integration into a lot of public roles as well. It's not just so regulators in regulatory affairs, in regulatory agencies are part and parcel of life sciences. We have a lot of public health people who are involved now in the life sciences aspects who have industry experience, and all these things are really important. Just whilst we look at some of the other questions, maybe we've covered some of the things we said we'd cover. I think one of the things we talked about quite a bit yesterday was about advertising. How do you know what you're going after? That is, I think, really quite difficult, because the life sciences sector does describe their jobs in all sorts of different ways when you see them on LinkedIn. And I think yesterday when we were discussing this is a really important aspect for people who are coming into the sector to understand what level the job is they're applying for. What does all this terminology mean? So I don't know if anybody wants to take that as a discussion point.
Yes, I'll start. I'll give it a go. So I know that when you look at industry adverts, it's really a nightmare of different nomenclatures that mean completely different things in various companies. So I think that it is for us as a company to actually put out good job descriptions that tell you exactly what it is that you are going to be expected to do. Is it a lab-based role? Is it an administrative role? What level is it? What responsibilities you are going to have? But then if that job advert is not completely clear, go to the company, go to the recruiter, go to people that you have in your network that might be in that company, send them a message or a letter and ask for something more specific, like, you know, what is a senior scientist in Charles River, or what is a senior scientist in AstraZeneca? What are the differences, and how would that fit into the job that you are actually looking for?
Yes, no, I think that's really quite important. I think, Ricky, you were quite exercised about this yesterday, and I think it's very true. Every different organization calls its levels differently.
Yeah, I both internal and external. I guess going to the you can't judge a book by its cover. In the external market, excuse me, if you're looking at opportunities and roles, please don't be misled by a job title. Job titles really are there just to basically give you a badge. They're not there to define what you're doing within an organization or what your potential is. So when people are moving between jobs, if you move for job title, you're making the wrong move. There should be something more meaningful in it for you. If a job title puts you off, my honest advice is ask the question to what you're looking at. If the role looks right and the depth and the content achieves your personal ambitions, you're making a difference in it, you're growing in role, does it really matter what you're called, would be my honest answer? Because if you're so fixated on, I'm going to jump for job titles because it will look great on LinkedIn, my friends will think brilliant. You can join a startup and call yourself a CSO if you want tomorrow morning, but are you a CSO at a big multinational organization? I've got to be realistic about it. The job title isn't what defines you. What you do and how you make a difference does. So when people are looking for roles, I am very passionate about it. If you're jumping for titles, you're doing the wrong thing, because you can call yourself whatever you want in a startup tomorrow morning. It doesn't mean you're any better or any different than what you were yesterday. You've just got a different vocation at that point.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Phil, maybe you can talk a little bit about big pharma titles, because they often seem very daunting from outside. You have all these vice presidents, senior vice presidents, associate directors, directors, and so on. How do people navigate the more junior positions?
Yes, thank you, Flick. And as my fellow panelists have said, even within the pharma industry, titles differ across companies. So you can't even say there's a standard across pharma companies for job titles and roles. So it does come down to, as Maria and Ricky said, having a conversation with the recruiter or with the person that you might be working with about the role, what the role is, what role you'll play, and then the title becomes secondary to that. What impact will you make, as Ricky said, is the important thing. But they do differ across organizations, so you do have to look into it and have the conversation.
Yes, I think one of the tricks that I have found recently with because we talk to lots of different clients and we have to understand within that what those roles mean. So one of the tricks that I've found is under GXP, everybody has to have a responsibility and an accountability in their job description or their role within a project. And sometimes it's actually quite useful to say, you know, where do you fit? What are you responsible for? What are you accountable for? Because that gives you a very strong sense of whether, when you're talking to them, you are able to do that role, because it has more insight than the title of the job, I think. So I think we have another question here. how you deal with rejection and failure when you are, presumably when you have not got either the job or the promotion as you already have. And I think saying that companies are more patent and profit orientated than they are focused on encouraging drug discovery. I think there might be one or two people in this or on this panel who would dispute that. But it's a very good point to, and it was one of those things that we talked about yesterday in terms of, I think, Phil, we talked about people moving from academia to pharma as moving to the dark side at one point. And I think that this question is really a bit like that. Are drug companies big bad organizations only focused on patents and profits?
How long do we have? Just to comment on,
Great question,
on that aspect, and the comment from Marina. If we don't deliver impact, we don't return anything to shareholders or to investors across industry. So first and foremost, we've got to deliver impact. And that's providing a service in the case of service organizations, or in the case of someone like us, ultimately developing a drug that impacts on patients' lives. So that is critical to then ultimately return an investment to shareholders or to investors.
Yes, I think that is very good. Who wants to go next?
I think I will comment maybe on rejection and failure, maybe not on making profits or not. I will leave it to specialists. in terms of rejection and failure, and I wouldn't say that rejection equals failure, because it doesn't. Absolutely. So that is the first thing to remember here. If you were unsuccessful at the time and regretted for the role or for the promotion, and I really try to emphasize it's a word regret, not rejection, because the competition out there is so big at the moment that it is sometimes you look on a job description. So going back to what we talked before, we've established what's the job title. We established that we're interested. You might have got in touch with the company as per Maria's advice to check if the job description is right, and it is right. You think you are the perfect candidate. You've applied. You didn't get a job at any stage. Learn from it. Ask for feedback. Ask for more feedback if you don't understand, or if the feedback is very, very basic. Ask for more because you want to better yourself, you want to advance, and then learn from it. And sometimes, unfortunately, the feedback, as much as every single one of us tries to be very objective, it can be 100% objective. We do everything to ensure that we hire the best person for the role, but sometimes it comes to a 1% difference between one and another person. So if you didn't get the job because someone moved ahead with someone else much more in their eyes suitable for the role, you haven't failed. It was just one of those unsuccessful situations, but learn from it, know that 1% difference, and then take it with you to the next role, and you will be successful.
Yeah.
Seb, how do you go about asking for feedback if you're an external and you've been unsuccessful in a role?
I think just ask for it. So you can either contact the company. It's much easier if you've got the acknowledgement of your job application from the company and you know the name of the person. You can go directly to them. But if you haven't had anything from the company, then asking for feedback at that stage is very difficult and might be counterproductive, because you are part of sending the application. You haven't invested that much time. But if you still want to get that feedback, there will be somewhere a recruitment team or the HR email address that you can approach and send a query. And from
Yeah.
So even companies saying we won't provide feedback at the early stage of applications, I can tell you for the fact that if you actually ask for it personally, it's so flattering that people will come back to you, because we can really see that you do care. So if you spend more time because you want that feedback, I care and I will give it to you.
Yeah. That is certainly for more senior jobs, Ricky, though, that is one of the roles that you certainly fulfill, isn't it? That if you've got somebody like yourself as an intermediary, people do know what it is that what it is that they failed on behalf of, because you will make sure you understand it.
Well, the honest answer is it's difficult. I think I'll share that. And if I just step back a point as well, rejection is completely normal in life and in any process, both within a business, internally applying, externally applying. You can never have every variable that a company will always know what it looks like. So I think one thing I should share with people, rejection is not a naughty word or a bad word. It's something we have to accept in our life and in what we do in roles. The role that I guess any HR or recruitment expert will always try and provide is to try and give as much feedback. I use a term called rejection, actually is redirection. If you can learn from the feedback and redirect into something else, it's going to be value add. However, you also need to put yourself in the shoe of a hirer sometimes. There's occasions where that business might have had hundreds, if not thousands of applications for a role. They can't give quantifiable feedback on everything. That interview shortlist might have multiple panels. It might have a big screening panel, which is essential HR, or even a video interviewing process, which is almost robotic AI focused. And then you might have 10 people interviewing it face to face. So a hiring manager inside a business will endeavor to always want to give you something useful to help you with what's next. But you've also got to put yourself in their shoes, that sometimes they are incredibly busy working on other projects other than always the feedback. So having an intermediate, whether an external like a recruiter or an internal like a TA, will always be your advocate to champion that information and try and get that from the company. It's not always possible. I have to share that a company won't always provide that. And I think the bare minimum should be at least an answer, a no, if that makes sense. I mean, the worst thing ever is when people have an interview and they never hear back. They never, ever hear back. So there could be more feedback that can come from whoever's interviewed them but all I'd say to people in a process is ask for it for your intermediate partner, i.e. your HR, your TA, your recruiter. If you've been recommended to the organization for a refer a friend scheme, ask your friend to ask a few questions, because if you get the job, they're getting a bounty for it internally, a thank you from their business. Yeah. Ask them to give a bit of help for you. And you absolutely get nowhere with it as long as you're going about it the right way. Then I don't think it's the worst thing if you've been told a no and you want to learn more, to be able to try and find a way to connect, to ask openly. I'd really like to understand more. Use David's tactic, use a letter if you need to, use LinkedIn if you want to. You won't always get it, but if you're going about it the right way, I'd like to understand more, you'll probably get a response. You go about it the wrong way, I didn't hear back, I'm really disgruntled. Well, you're probably starting off at a bad point there. At that point, you might not get your answer.
Yeah, be honestly analytical. I think, you know, we've all been for interviews and you walk out of it and that could have gone better.
Yeah.
So play it back to yourself as to, okay, what did I do well and what did I do wrong, and learn from it. And I would say to anybody going into an interview, go in and be yourself. You know, when we're interviewing graduates, PhDs, we're hiring smart people. We know you've got the ability to learn, but we can't necessarily change your personality. So go in, and hopefully the interviewer is doing the right job and is creating that environment where you can be open and be yourself. So just go in and make the best representation of yourself as you can.
Yeah, we've got a lovely comment on the chat saying that actually only 1 in 10,000 compounds makes it through to the clinic. So that's kind of better than the number of people who get a rejection in their interview. I think that's a great comment. And
in terms of loss of motivation, I think everybody suffers from it. Okay, anybody who tells you that they haven't is telling you porcupines, because they have. Okay, just roll with it. It will come back. And it happens. Learn something new every day, no matter whether the experience is good or bad. Learn from it.
And it happens right across the sector, doesn't it, David? Whether you're in academia, whether you're in biotech, whether you're in pharma, programs come to an end. And
Yeah.
yes, Steve, I agree with you. Failure is a fact of life.
Yeah. I mean, I love what I do. The CRO sector is highly dynamic. We see, business as well as science, but I'm sure as Mario will say, it can be extremely frustrating. Sometimes you want to bang your head against a brick wall, but you dust yourself down, you pick yourself up and say, right, tomorrow's going to be a better day. There's always sunshine behind the clouds. That's my advice.
I am coming to the point where we actually have to wind up. We have 4 minutes left, I think. I don't see any very last minute questions. Thank you very much for those of you who did write on the chat. I think from all of us here, we are really thrilled that people want to join the life sciences sector. I think everybody on this panel is passionate about what they do, and that's from those people who are at a lab doing discovery, even though, as David says, he has never seen a product actually make it through onto the marketplace. I'm very fortunate because I work much further down the track, so I periodically do get pats on the back when things get registered. But I think that it is an addictive place. And I was talking to a colleague of mine who joined pharma actually in the States, and I met her when she was working in Roche in Switzerland. And, she and I are the same age, and we were mulling over the fact that pharmaceutical physicians particularly never retire. They keep going until they fall over. And sometimes that's possibly not a good thing, but it actually demonstrates that those people who join the pharmaceutical and life sciences sector across the board, including academia, are so passionate about what they do that they do really want to go on and on. And in comparison to my colleagues who work in clinical medicine in their day jobs, they keep saying to me, but we retired 10 years ago. Why aren't you retired? Well, because I like what I do. And I think that is true of all of us. And so I do hope that those of you who've been listening, thank you very much, and I hope you do join us. And I see this final comment from Steve Connolly saying that the rizatriptan Maxalt, when he was involved in that coming to the market, it was one of the best feelings he's ever had in his career. And I completely agree with you. If you see something like that coming to the marketplace, it really is something very special. So do come and join us. And I think, Jasmine, our time is up.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, guys. That was such an interesting session. And thank you again for sponsoring the Building Life Science Adventures Conference. And I hope you guys that dialed in today enjoyed it just as much as I did. I'd highly recommend that you go and check out the messaging features on the app and urge you to ask any questions that you've got. Our next session is going to be at 3:30, and that is opportunities in clinical research. So I hope to see you all then. Thank you.
Thank you, Jasmine.
Thank you, everyone. All the very best.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.